In this video, we're going to make our train wheel. So the first thing we're going to do is start with this section right here, and then we're going to revolve it around. So make sure you start a new part file. Make sure it's a standard part file. We're going to create a 2D sketch on the XZ plane. And this one I'm just going to rotate just because it'll make it a little bit easier when we're moving things around. So this is our top, and then there's what our front will be. So first thing we're going to do is draw a rectangle. Make sure you link it into the center so everything is kind of anchored down. The lines will turn blue when they won't be able to move anymore, and green when they can still move. So our length is 1 inch going to that center point of the curve. So we'll just make a rectangle that is the same. And then also we have a 1/4 inch for our other dimension. Alright, then we can zoom in with our home button. And if you ever put the dimensions out too far, you can just click on them and drag them closer. So then when you press home, it zooms in a little bit better. So we also need an arc, and I'm going to use a center point arc because remember we made this to the center of the arc that's on the outside. So you want to move the center point to that green dot, which is the center of this line. We want to just have our line connect up to the top of there and to the bottom of there, and then everything's locked in place. Okay. And then this line I can actually change to a construction line, so when it's revolved or if something's extruded, it will ignore that line. You can just press that button right there. It'll turn to a dotted line right here. So our next part is this little cutout. So for that we can just add in a rectangle. Let's see, it's 1/4 of an inch away from here and 0.75 away from the center. And let's see, for this cutout, it'll be 0.125. So now we can finish. We can revolve. We want just this section right here. If you happen to forget about turning that line into a construction line, you could just click on it separately. I'm going to change to our axis, and we're going to click on this edge right here. So that will revolve our part around. So the next thing we do is add in our fillets. So for our fillets, they're all going to be the same. They're going to be on these 4 corners. And for all of them, it's going to be 0.063. So we can use our fillet tool. We need to change our dimension. And we can click on all of the fillets and rounds. And click OK. The next thing we're going to do is just flip this to the back side of it. It just makes it a little bit easier so we have a flat surface to work on. So I'm going to start a sketch right here. We have our flat surface, and I'm going to put a point right on the center. I'm going to finish our sketch, and I'm going to use the hole tool. Change the distance to through all. And if we look here, the diameter for that is 0.28. If we just go back to the front for a second, you could see it starting to take shape. And put another sketch on our back surface. The reason for that is we're now going to do these little cutouts. So for this one, we're going to use the circular pattern tool, so we only need to draw one of these, and we can use the circular pattern tool to duplicate it. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is add in 2 circles. Make sure they don't link up to any of these lines right here, because then you won't be able to move them. These are on our other side. So just make sure they don't link up or anything else. You won't be able to move any of the lines. So if we look here, we have a radius for the smaller one of 0.37. Then since we need typing this in as a diameter, we just times by 2. So our larger one, we now need a radius of 0.63. And again, we're going to have to times by 2. Alright, so now I'm going to add in a construction line, so I can click on line, then our construction line button. And I'm going to go from the center and draw it straight up. For this one, the length of it isn't too much of a concern. We're just using it to dimension off of because we need angles. And make sure you turn your construction line button off, so now our lines are object lines. Alright, and we're just going to add in 2 more lines. Make sure all these lines link back to the center. If they're off by a little bit, it'll make it harder later on to add in your other features. So we can see here our angles for this. So we want these to be 30 degrees apart. Right here, it needs to be 30 degrees, and it's 15 degrees from kind of this line right here. So we need between here and here, I want 15, here and here to be 30. So now we can finish the sketch and see if we can extrude that one piece. Nope. So what we need to do is go back to our sketch. So you can just double click on the sketch to go back into the sketch you're working on. We're going to use the trim tool, which is this tool right here, and just kind of trim this up just so we're left with this piece. And actually that takes the constraint away. So we're just going to see if this is possible to extrude the section we want now. Yep, now we can get the section we want. So you want the distance to be all, and you want to make sure it changed to cut because we want to remove that section. And then click OK. So look from the front. Here's our section that's removed. So now we're going to use our circular pattern tool. For this one, make sure that you have this at kind of an angle first, or else it makes it hard to select this feature. So you want your feature that you're going to revolve. You want your rotation axis. You can click on just a center circle. It's just a little bit easier to see that way. And 6 happens to be the default, so it works really well for us. And then just click OK. Alright, so here's the start of our wheel. And if you're doing the extra credit project, this is where the wheel will just kind of stop for you for the train car. And if this is for the train engine, so that's the main project, you're going to need to continue on with the next step, which is adding on this portion right here. Okay. So I have mine rotated a little bit. It doesn't really matter if you have these facing this way or these are moved a little bit, but just make sure that either you have a flat spot right here without a cutout or a flat spot here without a cutout to add on this piece. So what we're going to do now is add on this first column. So this one has a, if we look right here, a diameter of 1/4 inch and from that center point right there, it's 0.7 away from the center of our wheel. So we need to create a sketch on this surface. And for this one, it's kind of hard to see parts of it, so I'm going to suggest making this a little bit large first, and then dimensioning the circle before you dimension how far away it is from the center. Because you can see it kind of disappears a little bit. So we can finish our sketch. We're going to extrude, and it needs to be a height of 1/4 inch. Alright, now we're going to make another sketch on the top of the part we just extruded. I'm going to suggest you do project geometry on it just so you can see what you're working on. It kind of highlights everything. We're going to add in another circle, make sure the center points line up. And for this one, we want to have a height of it coming out towards you of 0.125 and also a diameter of 0.125. Alright, so here's our object so far. We're going to have another sketch and project geometry. We're going to use a point. Alright, finish sketch. Now we're going to use the hole tool. This time we want to make sure it doesn't go through the entire object. We want it set back to a distance. And when looking at this, we know we need a depth of 1/4 inch and a diameter of 0.0625. And then click OK. So here is our wheel.